This is a Fox 12 Investigates special.
Good evening and welcome to a special edition of Fox 12 Investigates. I'm Pete Ferryman. Joining me tonight are investigative reporters Ezra Kaplan and Adrian Thomas.
And from new immigration enforcement to the continued fight against drugs on city streets, tonight we're taking a look back at some of the most important stories we covered in 2025.
Yeah, that's right. It's been a very busy year for our Investigates team, and it's thanks to many viewer tips that led us to some of our best investigations.
And tonight we start with a story that came to our attention in Northwest Portland. Neighbors there reached out to us last year, desperate to call attention to the weekly distribution of free drug supplies right in the middle of a school zone and the dangerous chaos that those giveaways created. They tried for years to get the city and county to listen to their concerns, but thanks to their determination and our series of investigative reports, their voices were finally heard.
This is amazing.
I was blown away. I was like, oh wow, this is what a city street is supposed to look like.
It was a Friday night surprise, a calm and peaceful scene, unlike any Friday night this Northwest Portland neighborhood has experienced in years. And for neighbors Michelle Milla and Dave Gray, the change couldn't come soon enough. The impact was immediate.
We didn't see people passed out. We didn't see people shooting up. We saw none of the regular drug dealers that we see every Friday night in this area.
No tents, no people passed out on the sidewalk, nobody handing out needles and pipes. It was like a parallel universe that we should be living in.
Should be living in, but weren't. Up until last week, a weekly drug paraphernalia giveaway meant to reduce harm created a magnet for drug users and drug dealers who converged on the area and stayed all week, creating an obstacle course for families and children. We started covering the problem last year and documented a harassment campaign against Michelle, who was targeted for simply calling attention to the problem.
All right, Michelle, take care. Good night, Michelle. Good night, Michelle. Sleep well.
After receiving no response to our questions, we joined the weekly supply line to get some answers.
We've been doing it in the same spot for about 10 years.
But that doesn't make it right.
Same time, same night.
But that doesn't make it right, does it?
We have different definitions of what is right and wrong.
Our coverage then caught the attention of newly elected DA Nathan Vasquez, who said he was outraged and promised action. Soon after, the Portland Police Bureau began targeting the area for enforcement. And just this past week, Michelle and Dave were finally told that P-POP had agreed to move their outreach to a more suitable location at Northwest 5th and Irving, a non-residential area with treatment resources nearby. They say P-POP's insistence their outreach needed to be conducted here never made sense.
I mean, we hand out supplies where there is a need, and there is a need in this neighborhood.
It seems like the need is coming to you. Now, just days later, the peaceful streets speak volumes.
Why, since they've stopped coming here, why are the streets clear on Friday nights? Why is there nobody here?
The argument doesn't hold up, does it?
No, it doesn't.
Neighbors aren't the only ones celebrating the sudden change. Parents whose children attend Cathedral School are also expressing relief.
We're so grateful. The work's definitely not done, but we're so excited to see some change and to see some people that are finally listening that this is not a place for this to be happening near a school.
Meanwhile, everyone who worked to solve this problem hopes their small victories will lead to bigger changes across the area.
And so what's exciting is that there are other parts of the city that have reached out to us and to me and have asked, okay, so what have you been doing that's worked?
Of course, the work to clean up this neighborhood is far from over, but after a 10-year battle, neighbors say the change they've seen in just 1 week is definitely for the better. Well, the neighbors say they're thankful to report that the drug supply distribution in that school zone has not resumed since our story aired. And they also say that state funding for the drug supply giveaway program was canceled, thanks in part to our coverage.
So when we think of drug use, the usual substances come to mind like meth or fentanyl as seen in that story.
But there is another drug that's been around for decades and is becoming more popular and more dangerous. I recently looked into the dangers of nitrous oxide and why this drug is easier to get than a bottle of beer. David Warwick may never walk again.
My spine is so depleted. I got lesions all up and down my spine.
All from just 1 year of using nitrous oxide. At first, the drug provided relief.
I wanted to forget about work and all the stress of life and how bad I felt about myself for situations, and that's what did it.
But with a high that only lasts about 15 minutes, he quickly needed more and more.
So these canisters I was using, I could put them in my coat, and I just sit there and hit it every once in a while, and nobody had a clue.
The gas became his top priority, and the rest of his life began to fall apart.
And finally, it got to the point where things got so bad, and I felt so terrible about myself. I called my mom, and I said, "Mom, I need help."
Well, it rocked my world. Yeah. I knew something was going on, and I said, "What do you need?" He said, "Treatment."
Instead, he ended up in the ER, unable to walk.
Pretty much from my chest down right here, I was completely paralyzed.
Warwick went on to spend a month in the hospital and another month in a nursing facility. Recreational nitrous oxide use can result in damage to the body's myelin sheath, which insulates and protects nerves in the brain and spinal cord. Dr. Courtney Temple is a specialist at OHSU who studies the impacts.
Even with the correct treatments, sometimes patients have very, very long recovery processes and they may still be incomplete, so they may never fully recover.
Nationally, the number of nitrous oxide poisoning cases went from 28 in 2003 to over 400 last year. But even the experts agree that is likely a significant undercount. And in Oregon and Washington, the trend has been similar, with both states on track to hit new highs this year.
A repeated use can injure the brain and the nerves, and just because it is sold in shops does not mean it is safe.
And the reality is that nitrous tanks are easy to find. They are sold at mini-marts and gas stations all over the state. You can even order them online from retailers like Amazon and Walmart. And on each tank, you'll see them marked as for culinary use only, for making whipped cream. But the colorful packaging and huge container sizes reveal their real purpose.
It's not for whipped cream. It's being advertised for people to get high on.
As David recovered in the hospital, his parents undertook the task of cleaning up the house. There were hundreds of them all over the house.
This is literally death in a can.
Canister by canister, the graveness of the situation hit home. But as David has begun his healing journey, they are feeling hope and are grateful for another chance with their son.
I've always told our kids that it doesn't matter what you do, we're always going to love you.
With 2 months sober and a clear mind, it's a message that David can finally hear loud and clear.
Without them, I wouldn't be sitting in this house right now. I'd be in home care.
Great to see him turning the corner.
Absolutely.
So the question, Ezra, is there an age limit to buying these nitrous tanks?
You know, Oregon just this year passed a law making it so you have to be 18, but in Washington, where David lives, there's no such law.
Might be some changes on the horizon.
Could
We'll have to see.
be.
Our next story came to us after local and federal law enforcement raised the alarm about a dangerous new trend online.
Yeah, that's right, Pete. And what they describe as a relatively newer trend, criminals behind gore groups seek to take advantage of impressionable youth, primarily online.
In this case, it did take a dark turn very quickly. The content was, to me, disturbing. I was shocked as a law enforcement investigator. And for me to be shocked, I mean, I see a lot of things.
Sergeant Brandon Clausen of the Lake Oswego Police Department experienced a career first last June while working as a detective. He was contacted by the FBI in Portland to help investigate an alleged sex abuse crime happening in Lake Oswego, but the suspect was more than 3,000 miles away. According to federal court documents, the victim, a 14-year-old girl in Lake Oswego, had met a man in his early 20s in Florida using Instagram. Clausen and his colleagues quickly discovered a pattern of manipulation and solicitation of sexually explicit material from the man over messaging and social media apps like Discord, X, and Telegram. Clausen and the FBI would quickly find out the man was engaging in behavior consistent with gore groups, something Clausen hadn't seen before.
That was the first one, to be honest, yeah. I'd never heard of it, never even would have considered that would be something that people would be into or be doing. A gore group is a group that not only grooms victims, but delights in sexual violence, sexual torture, sexual rape, murder. It shocks the conscience.
Just days after the initial investigation, the FBI got permission from the victim's parents to pose as her on the different messaging platforms to determine where the man might be and gather more evidence. And in just a few days, the FBI was able to trace an IP address to a residence where 24-year-old Juan Sebastian Perez lived in Naples, Florida. That's where agents executed a search warrant.
He admitted to everything. He was even working on grooming other girls, unfortunately. He was part of, like you mentioned, a gore group.
Perez was arrested and charged with enticement of a minor to engage in sexual activity and possession and distribution of child pornography. His court proceedings played out over the past year, and he ultimately pled guilty and was sentenced to 30 years in federal prison this past March. FBI Portland's special agent in charge, Doug Olson, says these kind of crimes are being seen more frequently and that people and groups involved often use less monitored platforms like encrypted messaging apps.
What's the prevalence of some of these kinds of cases in Oregon and the jurisdiction that you cover?
It's here. I mean, it's definitely here. I know of 2 cases that have been fully adjudicated and then 4 active cases that we're working on right now. That doesn't mean we are a hot spot for this type of activity. It just means we're not free of that type of activity.
After the break, we take a look at ICE enforcement tactics and how a case of mistaken identity can land the wrong person in custody.
You're watching a Fox 12 Investigates special. This is a Fox 12 Investigates special.
Welcome back to a special edition of Fox 12 Investigates. As a newsroom, we've been covering many stories on the impact of President Trump's immigration crackdown.
Yeah, that's right. And while protesters outside the ICE facility in South Portland have been a main focus for much of our coverage, it's what's happening in surrounding areas by ICE officials that brings us our next story. Throughout the summer and fall months, the Fox 12 Investigates team has covered multiple stories on the rise in immigration enforcement across the state. While the Trump administration says it's targeting undocumented people with criminal histories, we've found that hardworking people with legal status and workers who support vital industries for the state's economy have concerns and even have been detained. In October, during the peak of harvest season in the Willamette Valley, we sat down with farm worker Araceli Cortez, an undocumented farm worker who has been in the area for over a decade.
¿Tú tienes miedo de ir a trabajar?
Sí.
Cortez says for years, she and her colleagues have always had ICE in the back of their minds, but have been on high alert more than ever this year. While Cortez hasn't witnessed any detainments, she says she has learned about farm workers being targeted elsewhere. The government is calling us criminals, but we're not all criminals, she says. Many people are working illegally, yes, but we're just working. We really contribute a lot to agricultural work. In the middle of October, a viral video shot in a Gresham home showed a large group of federal agents breaking down a bedroom door and detaining 2 men, Napoleon Magana and Arturo Cabrera. A Department of Homeland Security spokesperson says this was a targeted operation looking for an undocumented man with a criminal record. Only the young woman who shot that video, Mari, the older sister of Napoleon Magana, says the man they were looking for wasn't there, and she and her family don't know him. She recounted the experience with her cousin Alma, who provided translation during our interview. Mari tells us before the agents came inside, they were shouting outside for a man named Israel.
For an hour they were out there screaming. I started noticing they started getting more aggressive, more violent because we weren't coming out. That's when I saw them break the gate outside.
Mari tells us the only people with her inside the apartment were her 3-month-old baby, her younger brother Napoleon, and her mother's partner Arturo. Video shot by Mari shows agents detaining Napoleon and Arturo, and towards the end of the video, agents can be seen asking Mari the men's names, only to discover the man they're looking for wasn't there.
Hey, so that guy's Napilon and Arturo, not Israel.
Marty tells us both men are hardworking with no criminal records. And while Arturo, her mother's partner, is undocumented, her brother, like her, came to the U.S. through the asylum process.
What was that like for you to see your little brother taken like that?
Pues muy mal.
It felt awful, she says. I've already gone through something very similar, and so to see my brother go through something that I've gone through prior, it was very upsetting. Around the same time that week in October, longtime Hillsborough resident and local business owner Victor Cruz was detained by ICE agents. We sat down with his daughter, who says Cruz has been in the U.S. for over 25 years and has a visa for legal status to live and work. At City Cruz tells us her family learned agents were targeting a different Victor Cruz with a criminal record, but arrested her father instead.
And it was just like a gut punch. Immediately, the tears started flowing, the panic, the anxiety. Living in Hillsborough, we just always felt so safe, and knowing that it's a sanctuary city, we never imagined that ICE would target our people or people who are not criminals.
Atsiri Cruz tells us her father, who owns his own construction company, presented his driver's license and work permit to federal agents when he was stopped. But he was still detained and eventually taken to the ICE detention center in Tacoma, Washington. Cruz tells us her family is baffled why Victor, who has no criminal record and legal status, would be arrested.
He pays taxes. He's always been about doing the right thing and, getting things, working, just a hardworking, honest man. Just a dedicated, loving husband, family man. Targeting people who pay taxes, who are doing it the right way and trying to be here legally is counterproductive.
Now, since our report, we have heard from the family of Arturo and Napoleon, who called us to say that both men have been released from custody. Victor Cruz was also released recently, although the legal battle for all of them is not over. They all have court dates to appear for in the coming weeks.
So, Adrian, has the Trump administration said anything new about targeting undocumented immigrants who are in essential services?
Yeah, so we reached out to the White House for comment on our story and asked that very question. And what they said is that the Labor Secretary of the U.S. Department of Labor recently created the Office of Immigration Policy, which they're hoping will streamline the visa process, provide more legal pathways for migrant workers who come to the United States. But there still is a big question about many undocumented farm workers and other undocumented workers who've been in the country for years, paying taxes, have no criminal record. Their future is still unknown right now.
We'll see how it plays out. Thanks, Adrian.
Well, in our next story, another Portland man is back home after participating in a humanitarian aid flotilla to Gaza. After being detained by the Israeli military and held for 5 days in prison, he sat down with Fox 12 exclusively to tell us his story. For 5 weeks, Stephen Wahab volunteered as a crew member aboard the mothership of a 50-boat fleet headed to Gaza.
The flotilla is it's a global humanitarian mission to Gaza with the intention of delivering aid and breaking the siege in Gaza.
On board the 100-foot motorboat named Alma was climate activist Greta Thunberg, the grandson of Nelson Mandela, and about 25 others. For weeks, they had been training for what would happen if they were blocked from landing.
Everyone knows that this is a peaceful mission, no resistance.
About 90 miles away from Gaza, he says they were surrounded by the Israeli Navy.
And so, yeah, we got boarded. I want to say the commandos were actually very professional. Aside from intercepting us in international waters and stealing the boats, basically, they were actually very professional, as opposed to what happened when we got on land.
After about 24 hours, the participants were turned over by the military to the Israeli police at the port of Ashdod.
When they walked us off the boat, some people got a little roughed up, punched in some cases.
Wahab says that's when the Israeli National Security Minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir, arrived.
That was the first moment where I was a little afraid, just because I know what he's capable of. I hear his comments. He's a scary dude.
Ben-Gvir has called the members of the flotilla terrorists and criticized his own government for punishing them with deportations rather than prosecutions. Wahab went on to spend 5 days in jail, where he said he was treated humanely, though that wasn't the case for everyone.
I think the key for me is we have a lot of white privilege, or privilege in general, being foreign nationals in Israel. I personally knew we weren't going to be treated like Palestinians.
He arrived at the jail on a Friday, and over the weekend, various nations sent government representatives to check in on their citizens, countries like Malaysia and Greece. Not the case for Wahab.
We didn't actually meet with the State Department in prison until Monday, so 4 days later, and all they were able to tell us was, we're working really hard to try and get you out, but basically, we have nothing to tell you, and we're not sure how we can help you.
Do you feel forgotten?
Yeah, but it wasn't unexpected. I mean, what we were doing goes 100% against the U.S. policy in the Middle East, so it was no surprise.
He arrived home just ahead of the historic hostage exchange, which he is cautiously celebrating.
And I'm happy to see that there's a peace deal that's in effect today. But there's still so many injustices happening in both Gaza and the West Bank, and I think that kind of gets lost in the mix sometimes.
And he says this isn't the end of flotillas to Gaza.
These flotillas will continue. We'll keep increasing the numbers. Next time we'll do 100 boats. We had 50 boats this time. And I think the next time we will break the siege, because one of the greatest things that I heard after interception was we tied up the Israeli Navy to the point where fishermen in Gaza were able to fish for a full day and feed their families for 2 days. That was a beautiful thing.
Now, despite his arrest, Wahab says he's planning to go back to Gaza on another flotilla aid mission in the coming months.
Well, in our next story, a sawmill closure in Philomath left more than 100 people without jobs, and many wondering if the town's timber tradition has come to an end. A new buyer may be bringing fresh life to both the mill and the community. That's coming up on this special edition of Fox 12 Investigates.
You're watching a Fox 12 Investigates special. This is a Fox 12 Investigates special.
In small towns across Oregon, the timber industry isn't just part of the economy, it's part of the identity.
And when a major mill in Philomath shut down last year, many feared the end of an era.
But as we found out, a modern take on timber production could be the answer to the town's livelihood. At the annual Philomath Frolic and Rodeo, the timber industry is present at nearly every turn.
A lot of the parade is actually timber, the industry, and everything, but which you see that every day when you're up on Main Street. But hey, Tim.
It's a close-knit community with many family trees built on generations of logging.
My grandpa used to haul oaks mill. My dad has been in it since he came out of high school.
Hunter Petter is 19 years old with a commercial driver's license, and he sees his future in timber.
I mean, I don't really know anything else.
So when Philomath's Interfor mill closed last year, it hit hard.
The mill is the heart of the town. After it shut down, a lot of people just didn't have jobs.
We had no idea what was going to happen. I think there was a lot of fear that that was going to be it.
The mill was the only one within city limits. When it closed, more than 100 jobs disappeared in a town of just under 6,000. But 6 months later, something unexpected. The old mill got a new owner, a Portland-based company called Timberlab.
So when that Timberlab news came in, I think there was this sort of breath of new life, like, oh wow, okay, this isn't over yet.
Timberlab is a modern wood manufacturer that makes mass timber, giant factory-made wood panels and beams, strong enough to take the place of concrete and steel in large buildings.
Back in the day, you were using large trees to make the columns and beams for these structures. And today, with advances in technology, you can use small pieces of wood, 2x4s, 2x6s, 2x8s, laminated together.
Much of that work is done ahead of time in a factory, so buildings go up faster and with less waste.
So the whole building is built digitally, and it comes out to site and gets put in a place in a very predictable way.
And it's better for the environment. Mass timber can cut carbon pollution in half compared to concrete or steel, and it stores carbon for decades. And the business is growing. Timberlab plans to double its headcount over the next 5 years and is opening new facilities across Oregon, like in Philomath.
If we can come in and help revitalize that, that industry in that town, that's a huge benefit to the local community.
And while it's too soon to know exactly how many jobs will return, there's reason for optimism.
So, you know, even if we only get 50 jobs back or 70 jobs back, that's 50 to 70 more jobs than we thought we'd get back.
For Philomath, it means honoring its history while building something new.
We can innovate and use that heritage that built Philomath at the same time.
In a town built by timber and bound by tradition, the silence of a shuttered sawmill is giving way to the sound of a new chapter.
Well, that does it for our Fox 12 Investigate special. We hope you enjoyed it.
And if you have a story that needs investigating, make sure to contact us on our website or the Fox 12 app. Just look for the Fox 12 Investigates section.
And look for new investigations coming in 2026. Good night.
Thank you for watching this Fox 12 Investigate special.